Hello everyone and welcome back. So today we're going to be covering tags and recipes, finally. And after this, I believe we're going to be updating to 1.14. 1.14.2 Forge has come out, so I expect that to be a pretty smooth transition. If there are any code changes, I'll do a video on updating that, but overall, 1.14 is very similar to 1.13. There are there are a couple of issues that we'll have to cover with that. One of which is block loot tables. But that's for another day. For right now, though, we're going to be getting into tags and then recipes. So if we look over here on the left, you can see I've already created quite a few folders here. I've already got tag folders with the domains Forge, Minecraft, and Tutorial, which would be your mod ID. And I believe we're only going to be using Forge in this case. But those are the three places that you're likely to have tag files. In order from most to least common is probably Forge, your mod, and then Minecraft. So what are tags? Tags essentially are replacing the OR dictionary. They allow you to group together items, and tags can be used in recipes. You can also check if blocks are part of a tag. So for example, you can look at a block that's in the world and say, is it in this tag? And I don't know if we'll be getting to showing that in particular. I can go ahead and show, I believe block and block state have this method, and it is called isIn, and that takes a tag of block. So you may notice down here in the tags, we've actually got a blocks and an items folder inside the tags folders, so it's important to remember that these are different. Blocks are, again, going to be what's placed in the world, and items are going to be what's in your inventory, even if they're blocks. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a tag. So I'm going to, I think I'm going to want both block and item for this one. Okay, well the mod I'm looking at doesn't have item tags for the ORs, but let's go ahead and do that. So this is done with JSON files, as you might expect. And I am going to, actually I need to create a folder in here first. So new directory, I'm going to call this ORs. And in here, we're going to create a file called ruby.json. And this file is going to be pretty simple. So we're going to have a property called replace, and you typically want this to be false, so that if something else defines this tag, you're adding to it instead of replacing it. And then we have values, which is an array of strings. And these can be item IDs or other tags. If you're using other tags, you prefix it with a number sign. In this case, we're actually referring to a particular block, so we're just going to type in its ID. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing for Sapphire. So I'm just going to copy and paste that file and change the value. Okay, so we've got Ruby and Sapphire inside of ORs. And let me actually... Okay, so here's the folder, and I'm going to go ahead and just create another one while I'm here, storage blocks. So that will go ahead and separate out. And actually, I'm going to just copy these files into storage blocks, since they're going to have the same names. But we need to change the ID from OR to block. Now finally, there's two more files that we need to create here. So we're going to create this in the blocks folder. And we're going to call this one ors.json. Oops, if I put the right extension in. And here we're going to add all the OR tags that we defined. So as before, we're going to say replace false. And for our values, we're going to specify the tags that we've created. So again, you use the number sign, then forge, ors, / and then we'll do ruby and sapphire. So again, what we have right now currently looks like this. So we've got an ORs folder, which has all these specific ORs in it. And then we've got this ORs file on the same level that holds references to all of those. And we're going to do the same thing for storage blocks. And in this case, all we need to do is change ORs to storage blocks. Okay, so that's all of our block tags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy these files because they're going to be identical for items. But we're also going to need to add some additional files here if this will refresh. So now we need the gem items. So we're going to create a directory called gems. And we can go ahead and just copy some files from another folder since they're going to be basically the same thing. Again, just have to update the IDs. Okay, and create a gems file in that top level. Change ORs to gems. And that should be all we need to do for tags. And again, just so we're clear, this is occurring in the data directory. It's not assets. In 1.12, everything was in assets, including recipes, but everything is not rendering related, basically, is now in data. So that includes recipes. So now for our recipes, we're going to have a folder in data. So we're going to have one titled after our mod ID, and then we're going to have a recipes folder inside of that. So we want to be able to craft the gem items into gem blocks and back, and we want to be able to smelt the ores. So let's go ahead and start with creating the blocks. And typically I call this compressing. So I'll have a compress.json and then I'll have an uncompress. The names don't really matter that much. I believe the vanilla convention is to name the files after what they craft. So in this case, maybe it'd be better to call it Ruby block. But I'll stick with this for now. Maybe I'll rename it later. So for this, I'm actually going to use a shaped recipe. Could use Shapeless for this, but we'll use Shapeless for the uncompressed recipe. So we need type crafting shaped. And you can also specify a group if you want to group together like recipes in the crafting table. I guess we could do that. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that just as an example. Okay, so just give it some kind of a unique name. And now for shaped recipes, we need a pattern. So this will be an array of 1 to 3 strings, and those strings will have 1 to 3 characters, just kind of laying out the pattern of the recipe. Spaces will be empty. So if you have a space anywhere in here, that means that that spot in the crafting grid will need to be empty. And if the recipe is less than 3 by 3, you should write the pattern like that so that it can be placed anywhere in the crafting grid. So say if you were doing like 4 to 1, and I'm going to go ahead and just use the number sign again. So one way you could do that is like this if you were wanting 4 to craft 1. But if you do it like this, then it will only work if you're putting it in the upper left corner. So in this case, what you would actually want to do is more like that. But we're actually doing 9 to 1, so I'm going to write it like this. Now we're going to have an object called key, and in here we're going to assign every unique character we use in our pattern to an item or a tag. So in this case, for the only character we're using is that. And if you wanted to do an item specifically, it would be like that. So in this case, we're crafting rubies into ruby blocks. Or if you wanted to do a tag, which I'm actually going to do, it would be like that. So again, you have that number sign to indicate it's... No, actually you do not use the number sign in this case. So it would just be tutorial gems ruby. Okay, and finally we've got one more object. This is going to be result. And in this case, it is item tutorial ruby block. So that's what we're crafting. And if this recipe were crafting more than one, you would specify the count, which I guess I can just specify that as 1. But if you leave it out, it assumes that it's 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and just copy and paste this file for the sapphires. Most of the time I do just copy and paste the recipes, unless I need to generate a large batch of them, in which case I typically write a Python script to do that for me. So just changing the ruby to sapphire, make sure I didn't miss any, and that should be good. Okay, so now let's write the recipe to get the gems out of the blocks. So again, I'll call this uncompress. I may rename that before I push this code to the GitHub. So in this case, the type is crafting shapeless. And our group is going to be... say tutorial gem. There's some loud machinery outside. I think Audacity's noise reduction will take care of it, but if it doesn't, I'm sorry. Okay, so for shapeless recipes, we're going to specify a list of ingredients. And this will be an array of objects, and these objects can be an item or a tag. So again, you would specify item and then type the item ID. We're going to be using a tag. And in this case, our tag is... Actually, did I make a mistake here? Yeah, I made a mistake with the tags on the other recipes. That should be forge. Okay, so our tag here is forge, storage blocks, ruby. And that is our one and only ingredient, so if you had more, you would just add them like that. Okay, and then after the ingredients we have the result. This works the same way as the shaped version. So we're going to specify the block, or not the block, the item. And go ahead and put the count in. And now let's just copy paste that recipe. And that should be done. Okay, so the one last thing we need is smelting the ores. So I guess I'll call this ruby smelting. Okay, and for this, we've got type smelting. Ingredient, which is an object since we only have one ingredient when smelting. And I think you can use a tag here. Yeah, we'll try the tag. So forge ores ruby. And the result, we just specify the item ID. It'll be tutorial ruby. Experience is the amount of experience you get for this recipe, so I'm going to set that to 0.75. And then cooking time is typically 200. And as before, I'm just going to copy paste this for Sapphire. Change the two values. And that should be good. So let's go ahead and try running this. And actually, do I have JEI? I probably don't. Let me add JEI really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that through the build.gradle file. If you look on JEI's GitHub, they have instructions, but last time I tried it, they didn't work. So I'm going to have to go copy something else. There's a service called Jetpack, which you can use for pulling projects from GitHub, which is very useful. So under the build.gradle, where's repositories? Okay, let's add a repositories block here. And gonna paste that in. So Maven URL https jetpack.io. And one more line. Under dependencies, I'm gonna go ahead and I guess I can leave all the comments for now. I'm just gonna put this at the end. So to pull something from Jetpack, it's gonna be com.github. Whatever their username is, a colon, the name of the project, and then in this case I'm using 1.13 snapshot, which just takes builds from the 1.13 branch. Jetpack has some instructions. I think it's moderately intuitive, but anyway, let's try this and see if it'll work on the first try. Okay, yeah, so we can see JEI has been added to my dependencies here. If this is your first time pulling this, it may take a little while. If JEI 1.13 had been updated, it probably would have failed to pull it the first time, in which case, if Jetpack fails, just wait a few minutes and then try again, because it does take them a little while to build. Okay, and I'm doing that as compile. That'll be fine. So the build.gradle, yeah, a lot of this stuff is still default. So we're gonna have to come back in here and clean this stuff up at some point. Oh, and one other thing, I did update the mappings to stable 47. So if you go into the Minecraft block, there's a mappings right here. If you want to use the same mappings I'm using here, you change the channel to stable, and then the version is 47-1.13.2. Okay, so I think I mentioned this before, but no code changes are required for adding recipes or tags. As long as they're in the right spot, they're going to load. And they should show up in JEI. There's a lot of spam in the console because the mappings are different for JEI. It's fine. So let's go ahead and see. We've got our smelting for our ores. And you can see we got our ruby block recipe, sapphire block. We've got uncompressing, which is a shapeless recipe. So it looks like everything worked. And I don't know if there's any way to show the item tags that these belong to. Now, I think JEI was going to add something like that. No, of course that's not going to work. But one thing you can do is if you look in the F3 screen, the debug screen, on the right side under targeted block, you can see it's actually showing all the tags that block belongs to. So we got forge or sapphire and forge ores. And looks like it's getting dark, so I better fix that. Alright, so that is tags and recipes. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this short. Hopefully the machinery outside is not screwing with my audio too much. Audacity is pretty good about cleaning up the noise, but you never know. So thank you for watching. Next time we're going to update to 1.14.2, or maybe a later version if they release something by then. And I will see you then.